Hello and welcome to the Matchbook Champions League podcast. I'm Phil Kitromilides. We're here to look ahead to the second legs of matches in the last 16. We've got some really interestingly poised ties, 8 sides looking to make it through to the quarterfinals this week. Some of them are better placed to do so than others. Joining me on the programme today, we've got Mark O'Hare and Carlo Garganese to look ahead to those ties and try and pick out some tasty tips for you today. Mark, Carlo, welcome. Before we get to it, just a quick, very brief mention of the outright odds and how the odds have been affected, who's going to win the Champions League after the first legs. We had Manchester City as clear favourites throughout the competition. They still are clear favourites. And then you've got Bayern Munich, City about 3.9, Bayern Munich around 4.7, Liverpool, current champions, around 9.0 because of their first leg loss at Atletico Madrid. That's where we're going to start. We're going to start with Liverpool's game against Atletico at Anfield. It is a really, really big one for Jurgen Klopp's side, who, of course, have had a brilliant season so far in the Premier League, but it could all come tumbling down in Europe if they don't get a result against Atletico. They're massive favourites to win on the night, 1.598 you can get them. Atletico 7.3 to win at Anfield, and the draw is 4.05. Mark, of course, Liverpool know that they can win and still go out to Atletico Madrid. I suppose that's the thing in the back of their minds, having not gotten that away goal.
Yeah, the tie is massively on a knife edge, Phil. I still think there is advantage to Liverpool here, despite what happened there in the first leg. I'm not going to go overboard towards the match odds or the totals because it's an Atletico Madrid game. We know what to expect, really. And I just think, from my perspective, the value here is to back Liverpool to qualify. I know it's not clear-cut by any means, but I still expect them to qualify. It's still a 1-goal deficit. They're at Anfield. All these cliches about Anfield on a European night, they're cliches because they're true. Henderson should be back involved. Klopp pretty much fielded his first 11 on Saturday, bar a few. And I think the rhythm of playing together regularly will actually help them blow the cobwebs away of recent defeats, really, because Liverpool are a team who really thrive on the intensity and momentum of playing regularly together. We saw that towards the end of last season when they were competing on both fronts, really, and pushing Man City really, really close. They really thrive on that, and I think recently with the winter break and a couple of cup games as well, where he's mixed and matched, they've just not looked themselves. Obviously, Henderson missing as well has played a part there, and you can look to the last game against Bournemouth where they were pretty unimpressive, but this is different. This is what it's all about. The Premier League is already sewn up. They've known this has been on the cards now since the first leg in Madrid. There was a bit of bad blood between the two teams, and Liverpool felt Atletico probably over-celebrated that, which is, well, I'm not going to go into the politics of that with Jurgen Klopp and his own histrionics, but, we've seen Liverpool blow a Barcelona team away here at Anfield. I know it's a completely different challenge here, but there's almost a sense of inevitability when Liverpool get into these situations and the chips are down. I think the first leg panned out almost exactly how I expected it to, even though I think the actual goal in the game, the early goal was irrelevant, really, because Atletico carried on playing the same way they would have done if it was 0-0, really, with the low block, the narrow 4-4-2, playing on the counter-attack and utilising set pieces. I think they're going to try and do something similar here. So, to me, it's about whether Atletico can grab that away goal. Obviously, they've got a few players back, fit and firing, available to them this time around. But Liverpool have struggled against 4-4-2 setups. We saw the games against Napoli home and away. But I just think there's, I don't know, maybe it is the cliche, but Liverpool are much better than they've shown in the last couple of games, defensively and going forward. And I think I look at Atletico and think back to last year when they took a 2-0 lead to Turin. They were so good against Juventus in that first leg, and they were completely humbled in the second leg. Almost look overawed by the occasion, the atmosphere, Ronaldo, and it's now 6 defeats in 9 away Champions League knockout games for Atletico as well. So this is quite a new look squad, you could say, compared to sort of 5-7 years ago with Atletico, but the same characteristics are pretty prevalent, and I think they're going to have to be very, very good to hold out Liverpool at Anfield this midweek. So for me, I'm surprised Liverpool aren't favourites to qualify, and I think if you look to the market, you can get around 2.15 for them to do so. I wouldn't be surprised if they kept a clean sheet. I do expect them to score and I expect them to qualify.
Okay, yeah, as you mentioned, Atletico Madrid at home in the Champions League have got an incredible record. On the road, it's not quite the same. Liverpool at the weekend, they beat Bournemouth, Carlo, by 2-1, but that same result against Atletico would see them go out. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I would probably agree with most of what Mark said there. I think that Atletico's away form, I don't think they've won away from home. But like you said, they could go through with a 2-1 defeat or a 3-2 defeat. So if you'd have asked me before the first leg, did Atletico have any chance of going through? I probably would have, put Liverpool as really, really strong favourites. But that kind of aura of invincibility that Liverpool had is kind of been lifted a little bit. They've lost 3 times in the last few weeks, and it's not just their results, but their performances, like Mark said, haven't been good. The goals have dried up a little bit. I think some of their big name players aren't in great form. I mean, Roberto Firmino has only scored 2 goals in 2020. Mohamed Salah, I don't think is playing well. I know he scored against Bournemouth, but I don't think he's playing great. I think Sadio Mane is really carrying the attack at the moment. He's still playing fantastically well at the moment. If Atletico more of a chance. Do I think that 1-0 is enough? I think Atletico probably needed that second goal. I mean, Morata had 2 big chances to make it 2-0. I think Atletico probably needed that. I mean, we've seen that Atletico have got the blueprint. They laid out the blueprint of how you stop Liverpool. Mark laid that out as well. Low block, defending deep, closing the space for Salah and Mane, doubling up on Firmino when he drops deep. That's how you stop Liverpool. But to do that at Anfield, they're going to have to defend 60 or 70 minutes in their own box, and that is a tough ask at Anfield because it is a cliche, but it is true. When that crowd is cheering you on those cold nights at Anfield, it's very, very hard for any team. So it's difficult. It's going to be very, very hard for Atletico to if they want to go through, but my money's with Liverpool to go through, maybe a 2-0 win.
Okay, there we go. So both of you confident that Liverpool will make it through to the next rounds of the Champions League. Let's move on and talk about a game which is really, really interestingly poised. Paris Saint-Germain against Borussia Dortmund. Dortmund winning the first leg 2-1 in Germany. PSG, clear favourites to win at home. They've got a really strong record, 1.694. You can get them to win in 90 minutes. Borussia Dortmund at 4.7 with the draw at 4.9, over 3.5 goals, by the way, in the game is at 1.97. We think we back goals in the first leg, and that 2-1 victory for Dortmund has put them in a good position, Mark. But PSG are favourites here to win on the night. Favourites to go through for you as well?
I'm not sure, to be honest, Phil. Look, this is going to be an issue for not just this week, but also next week with the coronavirus. Obviously, probably going to have to mention it at some point. But from what I've read, French authorities are meeting on Tuesday to decide whether this game goes ahead behind closed doors or if it goes ahead at all. But by the sounds of it, PSG are doing everything they can to make it go ahead with fans. They've disinfected the whole stadium and surroundings to try and help proceedings. And I think that's what they need. They need a partisan crowd behind them to try and turn this tide, because they were outplayed in Germany. The 2-1 score was a little bit kind, I thought, actually. I thought they were completely overrun on the flanks. Guerrero and Hakimi had the go on them every time they went forward. And after Dortmund sort of figured out what sort of system and formation PSG were playing, they just looked so comfortable breaking forward on the counter-attack, and they can afford to do that again this time around. With the cushion, obviously the away goal, they'll be looking to do that as well. But I think from a PSG perspective, the team selection was strange from Thomas Tuchel. He spent weeks and months going into that game kind of working on this new 4-2-4 system to try and get his most potent attacking players on the pitch at the same time. And apparently he was persuaded against the idea on the eve of the game by his coaching staff, and they looked ponderous. They looked really unsure of their roles. Neymar was over elaborate on the ball, got a fair bit of treatment, in fairness, from the Dortmund players. But from a Dortmund perspective, Emre Can's arrival in January has made a huge difference to their defensive setup, their balance and their composure in midfield. I think we saw that again at the weekend when they went away to Gladbach and got a result. They're showing a bit more resilience to the sort of Dortmund team we've become accustomed to in the last 12, 18 months under Lucien Favre. So PSG, they're not in a great nick at the moment. They had the game postponed on Sunday at Strasbourg Meunier and Verratti are suspended. Verratti a particular blow there. Di Maria was injured recently. He should be fine, but that's obviously a concern. Thiago Silva too, but I'm not sure he's a massive issue if he does miss out. But yeah, they've had extra time to prepare for this. It's a fascinating game, but I don't want to get too involved just yet without knowing the full repercussions of whether the stadium is going ahead with a full crowd or not. But yeah, I do expect Dortmund to score. I think they're too good not to, and that obviously then throws the game into a potential shootout. And I've sided with Dortmund to qualify at the moment at the prices. Again, they're outsiders. Odds against is available. But as a goal line looks, we did do over 3.5 in the first leg. Should really have come in. Unfortunately, it didn't. And I look at it again. It's odds on to go over 3.5. And I just think I'd want to know more about the stadium issues before sort of pulling the trigger in that sort of selection too. But so yeah, sort of tentative towards goals and Dortmund to qualify. But I'm not going to put anything massively official up just yet.
Okay. Perhaps the fact that it is a second leg as well might lean towards there being more goals. We sometimes think that first legs are more cagey, although this was a pretty open game, the first leg, and there could and probably should have been more goals in it. Carlo, Mark fancies Dortmund to score in Paris. I mean, Dortmund basically score in every game, so they're probably going to score in Paris, aren't they?
Probably, yeah. I mean, they've got that man, well, that boy, Erling Haaland. I mean, he's an alien. There's no other way to describe it. I mean, he scored 40 goals in 32 games this season, and those kind of numbers are what Ronaldo and Messi were doing in their peak. And he scored 10 Champions League goals this season. Only Robert Lewandowski has scored more goals. Obviously, he scored those 2 goals in the first leg, and the second one was fantastic. There was with Haaland, he did a 60-meter sprint in 6.64 seconds, which is only 0.3 of a second slower than the world record by the American sprinter Christian Coleman. I mean, the guy is unbelievable. So, I mean, yeah, he's incredible. But I mean, he's not the only alien on that Dortmund team, because Jadon Sancho, if you look at his numbers, and Mark will know this, his numbers this season, his expected goals and his expected assists are absolutely unbelievable. And they're such a great mark for seeing how well a player is performing. He's way out ahead of anyone with expected assists in terms of overperforming their expected assist numbers. And for the expected goals, I think only Chiro forms major publics. I mean, his numbers are crazy. So with them too, you have to back them to score. And the thing is with PSG is, I mean, obviously it's a finely balanced tie, but with PSG, and we've seen it year after year. We saw it with Manchester United last season. When the pressure is on and the tie is on a knife edge, you just know they're going to bottle it. And there's so much pressure on them going into this game because the Champions League is their big dream, it's their big objective, and it's why they spent 500 million on Neymar and Mbappe 2 years ago. Yet, since buying those two, they've gone out the last 16 both seasons. And the thing is with PSG is, like, everything, even like if you look around the first leg, it's just a circus there. I mean, we've had so many things that have been going on that it's, you know, you just think, is not how an elite club should be run. And we had Neymar criticising the management after the first game. We had Kimpembe's brother slamming to get Mbappe and Cavani arguing on the pitch in the next game against Bordeaux. We had Icardi throwing a birthday party like 2 days after the first leg when they played so badly. You know, I could go on and on and on about this. Reports going on now that Icardi is not talking to Neymar and Mbappe. So all these things going on. I mean, it's just not how you run an elite club. And I just worry that if the game starts to go against them, if Dortmund take an early lead, how will they react? And like Mark said as well, I think that they do have some key absentees, especially in the central midfield. With Verratti out, they're going to have to probably play Idrissa Gueye and probably Paredes, because Herrera's out. Those two in central midfield, they're not, you know, I wouldn't call that an elite central midfield pairing. So yeah, I do fear for PSG if the game starts to go against them. But having said that, though, it's still very finely balanced. But if I had to, you know, go for it, it's 3.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like maybe a little bit on Dortmund to win, and then potentially some in-play trading opportunities if they take the lead. Because you've made a strong case for PSG potentially collapsing if Dortmund were to take the lead. And as we said, Dortmund basically score in every single game. Let's move on and talk about a game which is difficultly poised for one of the Premier League sides, Spurs. Travelling to Germany, trying to overturn a 1-0 defeat. They were comprehensively outplayed by RB Leipzig in North London a couple of weeks ago. The Germans at 1.60 to win. It's a very, very short price indeed. Spurs, who drew with Burnley at the weekend, again, not a particularly inspiring performance, but they do have both Harry Kane and Song out. 6.0 to win in Germany to perform a miracle, perhaps similar to what they did last season in the Champions League. 4.55, you could get the draw, which would see Leipzig qualifying. Mark, firstly, is there any hope for Spurs, and what's the angle from a betting perspective here?
It's very hard to be confident with Spurs at the moment.
I know. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, not just you or I, Phil, but the market absolutely hates Spurs at the moment as well. They drifted like a barge.
They hated them at the weekend, didn't they? Yeah, at Burnley. Yeah.
Well, even we'll go back to the first leg, and Spurs drifted like a barge on that day. Went off as underdogs at home to Leipzig. Then they went off as underdogs at home to Wolves in the Premier League, despite Wolves playing in the Europa League just a couple of days earlier. And then
they were underdogs at home to Wolves.
Yes, yeah.
Wow, okay.
It's unheard of, really. And they opened at 2.1 away at Burnley. They closed about 2.9 away at Burnley. Obviously going to extra time against Norwich in the Cup on the Wednesday and playing Saturday evening didn't help preparation. But Mourinho, whether it's kidology or whether he's telling the truth or whatever, who knows? But he suggested that Spurs just cannot compete on both fronts right now, and he was going to ask his chairman which match he preferred to go all out in, really. And the suggestion was, looking by the team news anyway, but it might be this midweek. But even still, Spurs at their very best under Mourinho aren't a massively fearful prospect, I don't think, for Leipzig. Maybe it would be if either Kane or Son were available, but I just look at the way they went and attacked that first leg tie against the Leipzig team, missing their three best centre halves. I just thought they were so timid, so unconfident, awkward, just lacking belief in all areas, really. Leipzig had the edge almost everywhere across the park, really could and should have won by a more comfortable margin. And I think now with the away goal and the aggregate lead, it really should suit them in the second leg. If Spurs are going to get back into this tie, they're going to have to get forward. They're going to have to do more than just pump it long and play on the counter-attack, which they have been doing. I think all the evidence suggests that this is the kind of team that Leipzig should relish playing, really. And they're very good in the transitions. They're very good on the counter-attack. They can beat you in many different ways. But you look at that team and where they're set up to really hurt teams, and I'd say the counter-attack because of the pace of Timo Werner, the skill and ability of Sabitzer in midfield, and Kuku's having an outstanding season too. It looks like a really unhappy situation at Spurs right now. Leipzig have dipped slightly. They hammered Schalke straight away after the Spurs game, but they've played two back-to-back draws against difficult games, in fairness, Leverkusen, but then they made changes on Saturday against Wolfsburg. So they've got this match in mind, really, and they're obviously going into uncharted territory here. Champions League knockout stages, can see the quarterfinals now. I expect them to see the job through. The price is quite short on a Leipzig win. Even with the minus 0.75, it's still around 1.75, which is quite small, quite tight, really. So it's a hard one to find something for. I just wonder whether the draw might be the value bet here. They don't have to go out and win. Spurs can get the away goal. Leipzig can score again. I don't know. It's a difficult one to really sort of find anything to really kind of hang your hat on. So why not look at the draw, because Leipzig don't have to win. 4.5 is fair enough.
Yes, no, fair enough. I mean, I was looking at the market. I'm not an expert like yourself, but yeah, nothing really jumps out at you from a betting perspective. Carlo, there's no hope for Spurs, is there?
Well, if you got wide in European football when you win 1-0 away, and we saw that with the Ajax game in the semi-final last season, because it is uncharted territory for Leipzig. If Tottenham were to somehow score the first goal in the game, then that will ask questions of a reasonably young Leipzig side, an inexperienced side. So, I mean, that's the hope for Tottenham.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Well, not really, but well, yeah, you don't know.
There's always a chance. There's always a chance.
I mean, you have to go with Leipzig because Tottenham are playing so badly at the moment. I mean, I know they stopped the rot at the weekend, but I mean, in the first half they were dire against Burnley. It could have been out of sight at half time. They improved a bit in the second half, so hopefully they can take that into this game. But I mean, no wins in 5. They've lost some big games, like in the race for the top 4 in that time. They went out of the FA Cup. We had the whole Eric Dyer incident of him running into the crowd. We had Mourinho hanging Ndombele out to dry after the game against Burnley. So it doesn't seem like a very happy camp there as well. And like Mark said, they're not playing well. And I think it's been a theme of the Champions League this season. The teams that have got a clear identity in the way that they play seem to be the teams that are doing well. And we've seen that with all the 3 German sides because you know how they play. It's they've got very clear patterns of play. The same with Atalanta identity, whereas the teams that don't have much of an identity, and I would point at both the 2 big Spanish teams, Barcelona and Real Madrid, Juventus, even PSG, they're the teams that seem to be kind of struggling a little bit in the Champions League. And I think Tottenham fall into that category as well, obviously with less talent. So I know the whole narrative around this game has been that Nagelsmann, the Leipzig coach, is the future and Mourinho is the past, and it definitely did feel like that in the first leg. So yeah, I think you have to go with Leipzig to go through, but it's difficult, like Mark said, to find a good bet for this. So I think a draw could be one to go for as well.
Okay, there we go. So yeah, not much hope for Spurs, but you never know. Let's talk about the final game, and one which is I was going to say interestingly poised. Off the pitch, matters have been pretty interesting with the coronavirus, meaning that this is going to be played behind closed doors, Valencia and Atalanta. Atalanta with a 4-1 lead from the first leg. You can get Valencia at 2.95 to win on the night, Atalanta at 2.4 and the draw at 4.0. The all-important goals line you can see there over 3.25 you can get at 1.95, which, as we said, Atalanta genuinely means goals in a game, although given the first leg context and given the fact that it's going to be played behind closed doors, will that make any difference? Carlo, it's been a strange time in Italy, obviously, coronavirus putting football into perspective a little bit. Football is not the most important thing, and it's certainly been affected by the coronavirus. How do you think all of that will affect Atalanta's preparation for this game?
Not much, to be honest with you, because Atalanta, they're such a positive team, and they won't change, even though they have got the 4-1 lead. They won't change the way they play. They'll still come out and attack. They won't sit back and try and hold Valencia. They'll come out looking for goals. So I think in this game, absolutely guaranteed goals in this. I would definitely go over 3.25 goals. I think. If I was to predict a result, I'd go 2-2. I think. Atalanta, their attack is unbelievable. They've scored 70 goals in 25 league games. Which they're breaking all kinds of goal scoring records in Italy this season. They've scored 7 goals 3 times this season, and 2 of those matches have been in 2020. They've scored 3 goals 13 times, 3 goals or more 13 times this season. It's unbelievable, and there's so much firepower in their attack with Ilicic, Gomez, Zapata's back for a week. Malinovsky and Muriel, both great attackers, and they can't even get on the pitch. There's goals like throughout the team. Hatabo is a right wing back. He scored 2 goals in the first leg. Gosens, I think, has scored. He's a left wing back, scored about 7 goals this season. Pasalic is a goal scorer. There's so many goals in there that you have to back them to score in this game. I think Valencia will definitely score. They'll definitely score 1 or 2 goals in this game, but I see Atalanta scoring as well. I think everything is against Valencia. Obviously, the game's behind closed doors. If they had that crowd, the Mestalla is a very hot environment, could have given them more of a chance, but it's going to be very difficult for them. They've got both their centre-backs out. Rodrigo's back. He played at the weekend, so that's a big boost for them. But it's hard to see Valencia going through in this tie. So I'm definitely backing Atalanta to go through, and I'd probably go with a a high scoring draw in this match.
Okay, Mark, is there any value in backing a Valencia win here at 2.95 at home?
To an extent, I'd still make Atalanta favourites because, as Carlo mentioned there, the two key injuries, particularly in central defence, Garay's injured and Gabriel's still suspended. So you've got Mangala and Diakabi there at centre-half, which is not a centre-half partnership you really want playing against Atalanta, especially a Valencia team who just concede far too many shots, too many opportunities. Their expected goals against is very, very poor. So you look at what Albert Saladas has had to do, really. He's done a great job in terms of picking things up from Marcelino, but I'm still wondering where the identity is in that team. And defensively, they've really kind of slacked off since Marcelino left, and that's not how you want to play against an Atalanta team which is free scoring, so accustomed to creating chances and getting away shooting opportunities, especially in these sorts of situations where Valencia are going to have to press forward to try and get back into this tie if they do try and want to preserve a bit of pride or even try and qualify, because it's going to be very, very difficult for them without the Mestalla crowd there as well. It negates a bit of home advantage too. So I think Atalanta are fair favourites to win this. We saw the effect that the crowd and support can have on Atletico Madrid when they played at Liverpool at the Wanda. Valencia aren't going to have that. So Rodrigo back is a big boost. Maxi Gomez is missing, but I think still from that 11, they're still good enough to hurt this Atalanta team. And I think if you look back to the first leg, Atalanta scored some cracking goals, played some lovely football, largely controlled the game, but they were clinical too, and Valencia weren't. Valencia still had the opportunity to score more than just the one goal, which sounds silly considering the scoreline was pretty one-sided, but I thought they performed reasonably well considering the circumstances and considering the players they had unavailable to them. So, I'm expecting more of the same, really. Obviously, slight concerns there behind closed doors. What that might have an effect on the tie, especially if Atalanta score the first goal. Basically, the tie is all over, really. But you can still sort of see this game being a bit of a shootout. As Carlo says, Gasperini won't change his style on his Atalanta team. They'll still go out to try and play football. 4 of their last 6 have gone over 3.5. Over 3 goals is a little bit short at 1.7, but over 3.25 goals I think is probably fair enough, considering the two teams on show, what's at stake here. But at the same time, I really would not be surprised if this ended 0-0 either, because of just the environment we're playing in. The
0-0.
Yeah, I mean, I can see this game even being 0-0 or basically a 3-0 or a 4-1 or something. It's going to be one or the other. I can't see it being in between there. So my preference obviously be to support goals as ever Atalanta play. But don't be surprised if this game goes completely against the script, just because of the circumstances.
Well, that's it. Yeah, that's why I started off by talking about the circumstances, because it is atypical for this game at Mestalla. All right, that's just about it for this edition of the programme. Before we go, we're going to get the guys' best bets of the week. So, Mark O'Hare, tell us your best bet of the week for this round of fixtures in the Champions League.
In a week of quite a few unknowns, I'm surprised Liverpool are outsiders to qualify, considering they're only 1 goal down against Atlético Madrid at Anfield. So Liverpool to qualify around 2.15. Okay,
and Carlo, tell us your best bet of the week. I've got a feeling I know what it is. It might involve goals.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it before. Yeah, over 3.25 goals for Atalanta. Valencia against Atalanta. It's guaranteed goals. Atalanta score for fun. They concede for fun, and they've got a centre back called Palomino, who at the moment is giving away a goal a game. So I don't think you can bet that he'll give away a goal, but there'll definitely be goals in this match.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Those are the guys' best bets for this round of fixtures in the Champions League. Thanks very much for joining us, obviously. The podcast is available to download wherever you get your podcasts, and the show is, as ever, live on Twitter, on Facebook, and on our YouTube channel. So make sure you join us next week when we'll be back to look ahead at the other rounds of 16 second leg ties. We'll see you then. See ya.